We've referred a few times to mindfulness during our discussions. And mindfulness is a very important topic because it gives us the link between what we might be discovering in meditation and what we might be talking about in the discussions that we're having, a link between those and our everyday life. Mindfulness is a critical link from leading to what we're doing here at the retreat centre, what we do when we sit to meditate, what we do when we read and reflect upon teachings, and what we actually do when we're meeting with other people and living our everyday life, going to work or college or whatever. So it's a pretty vital topic. And there's a lot written and said about mindfulness in the current society. It's been the buzzword, one of the great fads, if you like, of the last 5 years. Very, very important. And a lot of really good things are coming out of this mindfulness movement. So using mindfulness to help people who suffer from chronic pain. Using mindfulness for people who are suffering from addiction. Using mindfulness for improving people's general well-being, and so on. In many ways, it's actually a really good and skillful use of the techniques of mindfulness that have been practiced for up to 2,500 years in Buddhism, and taking them out in a secular way to many, many more people. And it's not that you're imposing upon them the demand that they should be Buddhist. You're actually giving them stuff that we know works and helps people, and is very beneficial for a lot of people. And there's a lot of research evidence now to show that mindfulness is beneficial. There is, however, a risk. And the risk with this emphasis and all these different kinds of mindfulness for this and that are around at the moment, that we can lose sight of the full meaning of mindfulness in the Buddha's teachings. We can lose sight of the full meaning of mindfulness. And in particular, we can lose sight very easily of the ethical component of mindfulness. So what I want to do this evening is to give you a threefold way of viewing what mindfulness is. This is not original with me. It's based upon the Buddha's teachings, but it comes in particular from a man called Subhuti, who's written a book called Mind in Harmony. I don't know if we have it in the library or the bookshop here. It's a very, very good book. It's basically about Buddhist psychology in a way. What is a Buddhist psychological approach? But in that there's a chapter on mindfulness where he pulls out these three key aspects of mindfulness, and that's what I want to talk a little bit about. So I've put up on the flip chart here the three aspects, giving their Pali and their Sanskrit terms. It's not properly written up because you'd have all sorts of little tweaks above and below the letters. But so we have Sati or Smriti. Sati is the Pali, Smriti is the Sanskrit. And he defines that as attentiveness. We have Sampajanya or Samprajanya, which he defines as awareness, and Appamada or Apramada, which he defines as vigilance or heedfulness. So I'm going to go through these three different aspects of mindfulness, trying to explain what they are. So if you look at the first one, Sati or Smriti, and attentiveness. This is where we apply mindfulness to the bare and simple facts of experience. So if you sit to meditate, the contact between your body and the mat and the cushion. Just being aware of that contact, of the sensations of the contact. Just being aware of whether in your body there are sensations of pleasantness or unpleasantness. Very simple, bare mindfulness, knowing what is there in that initial experience that we have. So it's before we start to add any interpretation or words or proliferate things in our mind on that initial contact. So simple sensations of contact, are they pleasant or unpleasant? The taste in your mouth when you're eating food, is it pleasant or unpleasant? Before your mind goes rushing off with all sorts of mental proliferation based upon that initial taste. So we're trying to get just at the raw experience, just what is there. It's actually harder to do than it appears because we are so used to mentally proliferating very quickly on the basis of simple experience that we can lose sight of the richness of just experience that direct contact. So you go outside tonight, there's a beautiful moon in the sky above the hill opposite. And I can look at that and very quickly I find my mind going, yes, and I remember da-da-da-da-da, and this, that and the other and so on, and I really should get my phone out and take a photograph of this and it'd be wonderful to share with so and so and so and so. What have I lost? I've lost that initial simple contact. So it's knowing very simply what that initial experience is. It's so easy to misinterpret. There's a loud knock on the door. There's a loud knock on the door. Truth is, you have no idea who's on the other side of the door, what the reason for the knock is, and so on. But often what we do is, if that's so-and-so, okay, I'm not sure I actually want to answer. It's this person, they're always very unmindful, and they don't know how loud they knock, and they're disturbing me, etc., etc. We create stories very quickly, instead of which there's just a loud knock on the door. So attentiveness, sati or smriti, is basically just being aware of that raw, simple contact. Very important. Then we move on to the second aspect, sampajanya or samprajanya, and awareness. Now, you could think of the first aspect, sati or smriti, being in the present moment. Very simple, but it's not the whole story. We need to be aware of a context, of a wider context. Attentiveness needs to be located within a wider frame of intelligent awareness. That's samprajanya or sampajanya. So when we're meditating, sometimes we can become so absorbed just in the simple sensation of the breath, just being aware just of the breathing, that it becomes so that we feel like we're standing outside of time, with somehow our concept of time and our awareness of time and things disappears. But with awareness, with samprajanya, we're trying to maintain mindfulness through time. We're trying to keep it operating. Now, the way to think about this, and Subhuti does it very well, he gives us a hierarchy of levels for the operation of samprajanya or awareness. He's got functional, purpose, means, practice and reality, and I'm going to go through each one of those This is how we can use mindfulness, particularly in everyday life. So functional awareness is the ability to discern clearly what something is, to label it correctly in conventional terms. An example of how this might apply is knowing where you are and what time it is. Knowing where you are and what time it is. Okay. Sounds simple. I think I've already given this example though. Some people who talk a lot about mindfulness are completely incapable of turning up on time for the start of meditation. I don't mean you, well, you're very good, but I mean some people are terrible at turning up on time. They don't know how to be mindful of time. They don't know how to be mindful of time. So it's a very simple level of awareness of context. Knowing where you are, what time it is, labeling things correctly in conventional terms. Secondly, awareness of purpose. This is keeping in mind, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to achieve? Awareness of purpose. So, you're all familiar with you're in one room in the house and you go into the kitchen. And you get into the kitchen and you think, why did I come in here? What prompted me to come into the kitchen? It's a very mundane example. You forget why you've gone into the kitchen, or you get distracted by something else in the kitchen that distracts you from doing what you wanted to do. And then you go back into the other room and you think, I went into the kitchen to do this and I forgot. So awareness of purpose on a mundane level. But it might also be a much more spiritual thing. Awareness of purpose. You are working on yourself to try to make yourself a better person. You are working on yourself to try and improve your ability to relate to other people. You are working on yourself maybe to be kinder and more open to other people. So awareness of purpose. Awareness of means is judging whether you're using appropriate means to achieve a purpose. Are you using appropriate means to achieve a purpose? An awareness of practice is, well, basically, you're working on yourself. You have a broader context, is you're working on yourself to make yourself a better person. But it may be that you've decided that you really need to work on one particular aspect of your character and your behaviour. So it may be that you've noticed that you don't pay enough attention to the other person when they're speaking, and you have a tendency to interrupt them before they have finished speaking. This is something that I, after 23 years of practice, still have to work with. My tendency to interrupt other people before they finish saying what they're trying to say. So you have a specific practice that you might actually be focusing upon. It could be all sorts of things, but it's always good in the spiritual life to try and give yourself a little bit of a cutting edge. So you choose something to concentrate on. Awareness of practice. And awareness of reality. Well, this is, I think it's to do with keeping in mind a set of ideas, a set of teachings maybe that the Buddha has given that describe what the true nature of our experience is like. So, for example, the Buddha teaches that everything in our experience is impermanent. Now, intellectually, you can look around in your life, you can reflect on this and think intellectually, well, It's obvious, actually. Everything changes. Everything eventually comes to an end. And then you have to ask the question, do I actually behave and live my life as if knowing that everything is impermanent and will change? Well, the answer is no. The answer is no. You get involved in a relationship, you think it's always going to be there, and so on, many different aspects of life. Emotionally, with our whole being, it's much, much harder to be aware of the truth of impermanence and change. So you might choose that as a teaching that you keep in mind, because the Buddha is pointing us towards something which is in the nature, the true nature of our experience. If we were to truly appreciate that, we'd be well on the way towards enlightenment. And there are many other teachings. So you can take some of the Buddha's teachings about the nature of reality and try to carry an awareness of that particular teaching with you during the daytime. Now, I've talked about attentiveness and awareness. Is that enough to give us a full description of mindfulness? I don't think it is, because mindfulness ultimately is an ethical state of mind. So I want to give you the example of, I don't know whether safes are like this now, but you know how old-fashioned safes, they'd have these little locks where you'd turn them and there'd be numbers and you'd hear a click and you'd turn and there'd be click. And the person who knew the safe code would know which numbers to click, and then they'd open the door and get in. Now a safe breaker comes in and they have the ability to sit there and listen very carefully to the noises that are made as they turn this little handle with the numbers. Okay? So they are being incredibly attentive. They are totally focused on the present moment. They are totally focused on what they can hear with those clicks coming from the safe. They're totally focused, so they're attentive. They are aware. What's their purpose? It's to get into the safe. It's to get into the safe. That's what they're doing. So they easily comply with the first two aspects of mindfulness. But is what they're doing ethical? No, it isn't. And this is what is missing, I think, in a lot of modern interpretations, the everyday interpretations that are given to this word mindfulness, is the ethical aspect of mindfulness. And this is represented by apramada, which is sometimes described as vigilance or heedfulness. The Buddha's last words in Pali were appamadena sampadeta, which means, it's sometimes described simply as with mindfulness, strive on, or with vigilance, strive on. And what does vigilance and heedfulness mean in this situation? It means that you should be very aware of your intentions and of the state of your mind, of your mental states. Are they positive, skillful, wholesome, or are they negative, unskillful, unwholesome? Do you have ethical intentions and ethical states of mind, or unethical states of minds and intentions? So apramada, vigilance, is the faculty of being awake to the moral quality of what's happening in our mind and the moral quality of the volitions and intentions that lead us to take particular actions. So in the safe breaker's case, there's no ethical awareness there. They don't see that what they are doing is, and they're not thinking and reflecting that what they're doing is unethical. So all the time you are practicing mindfulness, you are trying to bring in these three different aspects of attentiveness, awareness, and vigilance, looking and assessing the ethical content of your states of mind, your intentions. And in Buddhism we talk about how might we strengthen apramada, our vigilance, our ethical awareness. How might we strengthen it? And it starts with asking ourselves moral questions. Is what I'm doing ethical? What's my motivation for this? Is it wholesome or unwholesome? Is it positive or negative? Is it skillful or unskillful? But we also can take it further in that we might have trusted friends that we can talk to and to whom we can reveal our inner mental states, our volitions. They have to be trusted friends. You know you can reveal yourself to them. And you can reveal your inner workings. And they can help you to see what is happening in your mind and help you to work on how you might change habitual tendencies that are there in your mind. Because the sources of our actions are often things that are quite habitual, that occur in our mind. They may not even be fully conscious. The process of meditation and mindfulness, we are bringing into consciousness things that we probably often do not even question or are barely aware of. And this is, I think, what happens. Nayaka talked about integration. And one of the things that happens is when you meditate regularly, these may be unconscious or semi-conscious patterns, mental states that are there in our mind, become more and more obvious to us. We see them more clearly in meditation. And it can be quite troubling. But actually the process of becoming more aware of them is hugely important and liberating. They are arising in your mind to be seen and liberated. But you can get help with trusted friends and talk to them about those mental states, your inner volitions, maybe things that you keep hidden sometimes, about your habits and how to work on them, and they can help you. And when you meet them again, they can say, what have you been doing about this? So it becomes then part of your practice to be more aware of this side of your experience. So I hope that gives you an overall picture of mindfulness. It's a very full and rich practice. And don't just be satisfied with doing part of it. The ethical side of it is key to how we work on ourselves in everyday life. And I'll leave it there.